Well, Trump has found an issue that is pumping up voters, and that's immigration. But is his hardline deportation plan going to divide the party and alienate millions of people that the GOP needs come next fall? Then Hillary Clinton's exchange with people from Black Lives Matter movement, it could move the needle on the way that people view her. So why that moment could show a side of Hillary that her supporters have been waiting for. Also, Democratic Senators Chuck Schumer and Bob Menendez are now against the president's Iranian nuclear deal. We'll debate what that means for the deal and the senators' relationship with the president. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. And we're going to begin with a very special comb-over report. Nothing new on the polling front. The Donald is leading and, in fact, extending his lead. Now the comb-over is gracing the cover of Time magazine. Donald, he has found a wedge issue that also allows him to mock opponents like Jeb Bush. Now I'm talking about immigration, of course, and his massive deportation plan that he's doubled, if not tripled down on. Here is the Donald describing how he would handle undocumented immigrants.
We're going to get them out so fast and so quick, and it's going to be tough. It's not going to be like, oh, please, would you come with us, please? Would you come, please, with us?
That's policy. But what is working for Trump could work against the Republican Party. Now, last election cycle, after Mitt Romney lost to Barack Obama, the GOP postmortem said it's time for the grand old party to widen its appeal. Now, here's none other than the RNC head, Reince Priebus, back then.
By the year 2050, we'll be a majority-minority country. And in both 2008 and 2012, President Obama won a combined 80% of the votes of all minority groups. The RNC cannot and will not write off any demographic, community, or region of this country.
Okay. But I'm not so sure Donald Trump got that memo, because you can certainly argue he's not exactly helping Priebus reach that goal. All right, let's bring in our panel right now and get their take. Michael Tobman, independent political consultant. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. Jessica Proud, Republican strategist and PR expert with the November team. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Guys, thank you all for joining us. All right. Jessica, we had on this week the State Party Republican chairman, Ed Cox, and he assured us Trump's not winning anything. Don't worry, don't worry. But along the way, whether he's right or wrong, and you got to certainly think it's becoming more possible as the weeks go on here, and certainly how he's polling in New Hampshire and Iowa to say it's conceivable. Is he hurting the party because now I see Jeb Bush talking about an immigration policy that's different from the one he started, saying that he doesn't mind the term anchor babies, even though certain Latinos, if you ask them, they find it offensive. You have the Jindals of the world, the Cruzes of the world, and more on board with Trump's mass deportation plan, which no credible person thinks is doable, let alone practical. How much is this issue you think Republicans are going to look back and say, not just in the presidential, but next November, when so many Republicans are up for election, are they going to say, what are we doing? Every time we got a chance here to run the table, we get killed from within. Are they going to look back with regret on this?
No, I think he's going to be an afterthought at the end of the day. But the thing that's surprising to me is, like, yeah, conventional wisdom would make you think that. And the party certainly has had a challenge in the past attracting minority voters and communicating with them a message that they respond to. But Trump is not just attracting Republicans. He's only 6 points behind Hillary right now. He's attracting other Democrats and independents as well. So I think, obviously, some of the things that he says are hugely offensive. I don't think it's representative of the entire party. I think there's enough people in the party that are speaking out against that. But it is kind of a double-edged sword, because he's bringing a focus to the race that probably we wouldn't otherwise have. But in the process, it is putting some people off.
Due respect, though, if there are voices in the party that are speaking out against what Trump is saying, none of them are running for president. I mean, Trump has hijacked the immigration issue, and it's not his fault that the Republican Party might be hurt by this in the long run. It's the other candidates. Nobody.
Governor Pataki is speaking out regularly.
A lot of them are. And by the way,
nobody is speaking out about this issue on the Republican side.
It's the media that continues to give him the biggest platform. So maybe
but trust
the media
me,
says, you know
if
what,
another
we're not going
candidate,
candidate squared off and said Trump is wrong and here's why,
They have.
but that would get play,
Well, put it this way. Let's just look at Jeb Bush for a second, okay? When Trump first said his 30 million illegal immigrant comment, right? Jeb Bush waited till, I think he said it on Thursday or something, he waited till a Sunday to say that he found it offensive because of his own family and his wife and everything else. Now, Jeb Bush, who said he has to treat the issue with love, he said, I have no problem with the term anchor baby. My point is, he's been brought into this, Dom. I mean, when we talk about low information voters, let's remind everybody, just in the Latino population, of what he said. He took 11 million immigrants, that has always been the number people use, and he tripled it. It's 30 million. And they're Mexican rapists, by the way. That's the numbers he talks about. He's talking about building a wall all along the border that if people bother to check the price tag, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, and then the enforcement you'd have to put on it, okay? Then he's talking about rounding up, whether it's the 11 or 30 million, that they're not going to voluntarily, even he acknowledges going that, who exactly is doing all this? And then he's calling them all anchor babies and legal citizens born in this country that are constitutionally recognized as American citizens. He's going to change the Constitution and round them all up on big yellow buses and take them over the border by force if necessary, because they're Americans, but he doesn't think so. How possibly does this not become a headache for the party, because nobody wants to really mess with them at this point, to Andrew's point?
No doubt about it. Jessica is very good at what she does, but she's boxed in, and she really doesn't, there's no way to respond. Just like the same problem for Ed Cox the other night. He didn't really deal with the issue. I'm going to put this in a way that everybody can understand. Beyonce, the performer, had a popular song called To the Left, everything you own, put in the box to the left. I think that's what it was a term. And you might as well change it now and say to the right, because whether we like it or not, Trump is the standout leading candidate that graced the cover now of Time magazine. His numbers are only going to go up, and Jeb Bush is almost, maybe I shouldn't say a desperation point, but Trump is pulling him to the right, and even if Trump is not the nominee, the Republicans are going to have a problem.
In another country, he would be in a different party. If it was France, he'd be on the National Front. If it was England, he'd be in the UKIP. And these are folks where they have their flash in the pan, they get attention paid to them, and their policies are dangerous and hateful. And then when the voters have their chance and it's time for the voters to make a decision, they don't vote for them. You know, the National Front doesn't win. UKIP lost seats. And they didn't actually drive national policy after, for a while, driving national conversation.
But
those are the analogies that people should
that's a good analogy, but what's different is, isn't it fair to say, Michael, that if he holds 20% of the primary Republican electorate, it changes the whole dynamic? That even if he doesn't win, what does he do throughout this whole process?
No, I think it is analogous, because UKIP was talked about as pulling votes away from the conservative government. It might cost them a majority, and it didn't work out that way, but it did force the Cameron government to be more conservative and talk about things like immigration. They weren't talking about rounding up folks in London and shipping them off the island, but I think it is an apt analogy, and those hateful policies the voters rejected, and I expect that when it comes time, Republican primary voters here will do the same.
But Jessica, I'm curious, and you don't even have to put names to it. You got a lot of clients that you work with who run for office, some statewide, some not. Has the Trump campaign for any of them said, wait a minute, this guy hasn't spent any money? He's managed to do this without spending any money, without having any real ground game, without having any real organization. And when somebody, especially in a state like New York, and a Republican's going to get outspent 3, 4, 5 times, do they say, you know what? Maybe I just throw bombs like this guy. And if I do it in a way that people think's funny or whatever, this is a new way to campaign. Is there a chance that what we're looking at isn't just, you know, a TV personality, you know, reality TV, but maybe a different kind of campaign?
No, because the Trump brand is something unto itself. It always has been. Like, you know, no one, it's not like all of a sudden, you know, no one decided to take him seriously. I mean, he's been crazy for years saying all these ridiculous things. So I don't think, like, you know, anyone could just go out there tomorrow and say something outrageous and you're going to have the same kind of impact. Like, he built this celebrity status, this caricature of himself, and he's been able to leverage that as a candidate. But I don't think that this is going to be like some model that candidates are going to to come out and try to use.
Don't forget, it hasn't worked yet. He hasn't won anything. No. He's probably, I think if we took a poll on the panel, he's probably not going to win anything. He's leading in the polls right now.
I don't know about that.
I just got back. Don't start
But my point is this. Let's not look that far ahead. I'm saying to you, though, now, whether it's Bush, whether it's Walker, whether it's whoever emerges, don't they emerge really bruised on the issue of immigration? Because Latinos, unlike African Americans, you got a very Catholic base here from a population. On social issues, you can see some commonality with the Republican platforms. The right Republican could peel off, I think, a good amount of the Latino population. But when their party is throwing around terms like anchor babies and they're talking about mass deportations and everything else, it's a non-starter from jump. You can't just unwind that and pretend it never happened.
It depends on how far these other candidates are willing to go in chasing
Trump right now.
Well, look how far
they've already gone.
No, I don't disagree.
Bush is saying anchor babies.
I don't disagree with you. Marco Rubio might be able to walk it back simply because of his heritage. But if George Pataki is the only one who's really talking in a reasonable tone about this issue, then it's going to hurt Republicans on this issue. But keep in mind, that's also where the base is right now. There was a reason why they're all going that far to the right. It's because that's where the voters are who haven't become independents and left the Republican Party. So, you could blame the candidates. You could also blame the voters in the base.
But Andrew, there was just a Rasmussen poll that came out that showed a majority of voters, not just Republicans, a majority of Americans want to see a wall built. It is not just Republicans. And look, you can have a stance on wanting to reform the immigration system in this country and put an end to illegal immigration and not be a Trump-esque about it. And so it's no doubt a tricky line for these candidates to walk.
Sorry.
But it's not
Somebody asked
impossible.
me today that watches the show regularly, they go, do you think Dominic's right? Because he's the only guy who's ever said, don't laugh at Trump. And I'm saying, it's very frightening. It's very frightening. But I might be starting to change my tune here. And I'm going to get my Canadian citizenship ready at that
Somebody
point.
give me a life preserver to throw after you guys.
I don't know.
Oh, come back.
And when it blows up, we'll see, like, Rich, I told you were wrong about Trump. Yeah, so anyway. Okay, we want to get you involved in our conversation. Head over to Facebook and Twitter to sound off on today's question. Is Donald Trump helping or hurting the GOP with his mass deportation plan? You heard Jessica say where the polling is on this one. Okay, up next, we're going to take a look at the Democrats and Hillary's challenges and also what potentially could be a defining moment for, at least a pivotal one for her campaign. I know it's early, but is her meeting with the Black Lives Matter movement maybe an opening for the kind of Hillary that she ought to show to the public? We'll talk about that and more after this.